What's the stupidest thing anyone can ask in class? Story 1. I went to college for 3D animation and VFX. I can't remember the exact assignment because we did several things involving weaponry, whether it was modeling a sword or gun for usage in games or filming a short scene off campus we would then edit a 3D animated monster into. But our professor was joking around with us saying, "Now, obviously, if you were modeling a weapon, you can't bring it into the school for reference." And this one guy seriously asked, "Why not?" This guy was already infamous among my fellow students at the time for, 1, cornering this one girl in our program who had come to study at our school from India in a secluded part of the college library and trying to get her to convert to Christianity for at least half an hour within a couple of months of our first year, and 2, for straight up saying, "I don't think Hitler should have died because I'm too nice to want anyone to die," in the middle of class. And if I remember correctly, the conversation beforehand was completely unrelated. Let's just say if we weren't already extremely uncomfortable around him by then, we definitely were when he seriously asked why we weren't allowed to bring weapons to a school. Like, dude, isn't it totally obvious? This took place in Canada, for context, so mass shootings aren't as common here as they are in the States. But it's not like they never happen, and schools here are still pretty damn strict about that stuff. Hell, that's the reason why I mentioned filming off campus earlier. Once, we tried to film a scene where a handful of the class was dressed in medieval armor and wielding swords supplied by a few classmates who LARPed on weekends. The plan was to get some footage so we could add a dragon in later to practice video compositing. Within 20 minutes, a school official came over to us to tell us we had to get the swords we were using off campus because it was a security hazard and a breach of school policy, even though we were already on the edge of campus in a field that was basically never used, and we had to reschedule our filming for another day. This happened before the guy even asked why we weren't allowed weapons in class, if I remember correctly, which just made it all the stupider. That just really, really sucks. I mean, swords in Canada? That's what sets people off? As someone living in the States, yeah, there's a lot more to worry about. I know it's going to be more work, but why didn't they just probably film with little bits of wood with dots on them that they could later composite the guns into along with the monster? Maybe it's more work, but maybe then they wouldn't get accosted by school officials. Story 2. I can recall at the very least 3 of these, but there were many more, all of them from junior and senior years of high school. So in junior year of high school, my teacher mentions Beethoven in the middle of a lecture, and a 17-year-old asks, "Who's Beethoven?" We were all about to tear him a new one until the kid in front of him said, "You dummy, how don't you know who Beethoven is?" And then added in the most assertive manner possible, "It's the dog from the movies." Series of face palms ensues. There was also this girl in senior year during a lecture on agriculture. A teacher said, "Contrary to popular belief, most soy isn't plant for the production of soy milk, but instead it's for feeding of cattle." To which a girl asked, "So that they can make soy milk?" She was 18. This girl was actually known for asking dumb stuff. She also asked something dumb about dolphins that my class had as an inside joke. Sadly, I can't remember it. This was at least 6 years ago. There was also a classmate of mine who kept saying to anyone whom asked her that photophobia is fear of light and pictures. As a girl with astigmatism and photophobia, I explained to her what it was since I didn't want her to spread misinformation. So I told her that photophobia is an extreme sensitivity to lights. She proceeded to sat me down and kept insisting that it was the fear of lights and pictures. I ended up using my opportunity to ask the teacher what photophobia was so that she would finally listen. The classmate and I sit on the front row with 2 seats between us for more context. After the teacher said what I was saying, I asked him to move a little just for me to be way the biggest douche and tell her, "Told ya!" which was super uncalled for, but she got a quarter of the class asking me, how could I be an artist if I had photophobia? People will ask dumb questions, but some people have to try and correct them because it spills over onto their experience. I'm sure this person would have just left well enough alone if it was just her asking a dumb question. But her asking that dumb question got everyone giving her misinformation and guff. I understand her pain. Story 3. I remember in my first grade class, I asked, how do you spell D-I-E, die, in reference to the singular version of the word dice. I was asking if it was spelled D-Y-E, as in tie-dye, or D-I-E, as in you expire. Teacher broke her neck in my direction with the most annoyed or offended scowl, didn't answer my question, but took my clothespin. Our class had a weird behavior rating chart consisting of red, yellow, and green. Everyone starts each day on green, and moved it straight to red. The class just sort of sat there in puzzled and stunned silence, staring between the teacher and I, and no further words were exchanged on the subject that period. Ended up getting written up, and my dad saw the slip, got ticked, but not at me. He stormed straight down to the school the next day and put the fear of God into that teacher. The slip was pretty much rendered to about the same amount of value as a single Cheez-It. Didn't get into trouble, really. Too long didn't read? I got a pink slip for asking how die, as in rolling the die, is supposed to be spelt. Dad becomes Satan and terrified my poor teacher. Edit. Obviously, my dad had asked me why I got a pink slip saying inappropriate, disruptive behavior during class or making offensive comments. He did not just automatically take my side, just to clarify. When I explained to him exactly what I had asked and what she did after, that was what made his blood boil. I agree with this parent. This is the teacher's job. The student is asking a question on how to spell something. It's not appropriate. We're not talking about inappropriate subjects, just a spelling, and it's the teacher's job to teach. Teach! Story 4. When I was 16, had a gynecologist come and give us a talk about uterine cancer, particularly the kind that can be transmitted through unprotected intimacy. Overall, an extremely educational and enriching talk, which she ended by reminding everyone to practice safe intimacy, as well as encouraging male students to get vaccinated against it since, while not sufferers, they can be carriers, and my country only offers the vaccine freely to females. Suddenly, she gets interrupted by this student, mean girl type chewing gum and all, who rudely says, "That's like such dangerous advice." Doctor is patient enough to ask, "How so?" To which she replies, "Well, I mean, the side effects. My parents didn't have me vaccinated because some girl in..." I saw the gyno's soul leave her body before she interrupted the girl. Some girl somewhere. Of course, you don't know where or who. Why would you? Who got really sick or perished supposedly because of her shot. Is that what you were going to say? The girl replied, "Yes." And the gynecologist continued, "You know what that is? Fake news. And your parents? Fools who believed such fake news and put you at risk of a life-threatening disease because of it, and I won't hear any more of it." The whole assembly was nodding in agreement and amusement that this deity-damned child just tried to outsmart a doctor whose literal thesis and research was on uterine cancer and the proven benefits of vaccination with some word-of-mouth anti-vax hogwash. Story 5. There wasn't really anything stupid I asked in class, even though when I did indeed do the same thing at home, Mother would usually reply with, "I'm hunting elephants," or something along those lines. But my high school horticulture teacher, Dr. Thomas, made up for all that by having a reputation specifically with me, but apparently with literally nobody else in the class itself. where every question I asked him imaginable would be construed as stupid, even if it were indeed smart. Asking for help met me with the reply, "You should know how to do this yourself." Every question relating to something I didn't understand was met with, "Oh, come on, you should understand this by now." And asking about literally anything related to the biology or history of plants was usually responded to with, "Go look it up," or "Can't you go on the internet to find it yourself, kid?" Now, I obviously can't recall everything, as per previously mentioned, but he basically treated me as the stupid kid in class, just for him being beneath me. Usually, one would be above the other for saying that, but apparently wearing a Princess Peach shirt that said "Wish you were her" ultimately set him off, since it must have been a middle school shirt instead of for any age. Overall, he did like me in all fairness, and he was a great teacher all around. He just so happened to like being on top. Story 6. Dumbest question I ever heard was in 10th grade U.S. history. Someone casually asked, "So who won the Civil War anyway?" I mean, I kinda get it since the war looms so large in the American psyche, and in a way is still being fought. Another example is my own. An assembly in 7th grade. A meteorologist was talking about his education and career, and it struck me as odd that meteors were space rocks and meteorology was concerned with the weather. I essentially wanted to know the etymology of his profession, but lacked the vocabulary to express this well. I raised my hand at the Q&A portion and inelegantly asked him, "Why is it called meteorology?" And he kindly just gives me the definition. The whole assembly laughs. I'm confused, then annoyed when I realize my classmates thought I asked such a stupid question, so I clarify. He sort of cocks his head and admits he doesn't know the etymology, and the assembly moves on. Later that week, someone called back to that moment and teased me about being an idiot. Apparently, he didn't hear or had forgotten the follow-up. And when I explained my question, he got the same faraway look I did when the thought first popped into my head. Yeah, why is that? Looks like this person's got a lot of teasing, but good for this person for just standing up for what he or she was asking. And it looks like he got the person that was teasing them to kind of think along the same lines. I gotta look it up myself. What do you think? Why is it called meteorology when it deals with the weather? Story 7. Too long didn't read? Boy in 8th grade chemistry class doesn't know how dandruff shampoo works. So in 8th grade chemistry class, my teacher was talking about science stuff. I don't remember exactly what. But what I do remember was that, to give an example, he said something like, "I have dandruff, but I used Head and Shoulder shampoo and my dandruff has gone away. Now I use it all the time and I haven't had any dandruff since." One boy in my class said something that baffled me and the whole class. "If you don't have dandruff anymore, why do you keep using it?" I guess to give the boy some slack, the question itself wasn't super bad, but what followed made it ridiculous. For a solid 15 minutes or more, my teacher tried to explain to this kid why you would need to keep using this shampoo to not have dandruff anymore. My teacher even drew a timeline on the board to illustrate his point, but the boy still didn't understand. It was the most ridiculous and hilarious experience I've ever witnessed. I hope he knows how shampoo works now. Story 8. I have never heard an actually super stupid question until my history class, when my teacher started teaching us about religion and stuff from the past and the effects it's had on our lives, plus introduced us to the Latin terms for heaven, hell, and purgatory. Hearing them, it's really obvious because they sound super similar. So when the teacher asked if anyone knew what they said, nobody but me raised their hand. I got all three, and people looked at me like, "How did you know that?" And the teacher said it was really neat I knew that, but one kid just randomly said before she continued teaching, "You speak Latin?" And people looked at me again, so I just said, "Yeah," or something. I don't remember if I actually said, "Yeah, I do," or "No." I got it from context, but it felt super obvious. Also, this teacher was a personal favorite from when I was a kid because she was real cool and made class fun. Story 9. In a high school science class, the teacher asked us to calculate the weight of the air in the room by using the PV equals RNT formula. But before we got to work on it, he made us all take a guess. between whether the air weighs approximately 30 kilograms, 100 kilograms, or 300 kilograms. Then we got to work calculating it. We were told to assume the class is 3 meters by 6 meters by 10 meters, or something like that. After a few minutes, the teacher asked the not-so-bright kid what his answer is. Everyone knew something good was about to be said, and the kid just said, 1. Teacher asked, 1 kilogram? And the kid slowly answered, 1 meter? Either he believed the air in the room weighed 1 meter, or he was still grappling with the concept of meters when calculating the volume of the lab. This wasn't the first or the last time he said something that had the teacher questioning the future of humanity. There's a famous example of confusing measurements with the title for the book and movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Leagues doesn't refer to the depth from the ocean's surface. 20,000 leagues refers to the amount of distance that the submarine traveled while under the sea. That one's a little confusing, I know. But that kid was just stupid. Story 10. My classes are a gem for stupidity. I was in geometry class and my teacher asked what city was in the bottom left of Tennessee, and some genius answered, Florida. Sounded so sure, too. 1. Florida is not in Tennessee. 2. Florida is on the right side of the U.S., and I'm pretty sure they were a junior, too. Also, the kid who believed that women with the head things, I assume either an Amish woman's bonnet or a nun's habit, did not exist. She thought they were made up for movies, and said if she ever met one, she'd freak out. I still don't know if she meant Amish women or nuns. They were talking about Amish people and Mormons for some reason. We're in biology, but neither makes it better. And my personal favorite? Every year, my sister forgets how to divide. Every year, without fail. She's 14. I know a lot of stupid people. Don't know what I'd do without them.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 11. I went to college for art. One of the required first-level classes was color theory. I didn't think much of it and was expecting something that more taught how to effectively use color, various color themes and meanings, etc. I was right about that, and it was an overall easy class that gave some good resources. Then the first day of class, we did an exercise to go over the color wheel. Felt like I was in elementary school. We were out in groups for an activity, and no one in my group could figure out anything. These were college students, all were art majors, and at least one had a focus on painting and another in graphic design. The painting student asked what 2 colors made pink. To clarify, they were not colorblind. There was no language barrier. At 19 and majoring in art, they legitimately did not know what colors to mix to make pink. Story 12. This reminds me of one of my digital media graphic design classes. I was showing this graphic I did based on one of J.R.R. Tolkien's quotes, the sun and moon one, and one of my fellow students had a ditzy moment when she saw the moon I had created. She said, "Why aren't the craters all the same and even?" or something similar. And legit, everyone, including me, said, "The craters on the moon are not even, Christina." Later, I felt bad for speaking to her like that, but then I learned that during the practicum to Tibet I didn't go on. I wasn't in the greatest of health at the time. She was viciously mean to a longtime friend, picking and belittling her when they were in the shared hotel room because my friend was homeschooled instead of being public schooled. So I don't feel as bad. Just goes to show you in how you treat people can determine whether if someone makes fun of you that they're punching up or punching down. This girl had her chance to be in the punching down category and be pitied, but she managed to be a shrew to people, and there we go. She got bumped up in the weight class. Story 13. Had a friend who graduated college at the same university I did tell me that the stars were painted in the sky as little dots, and that they were not big balls of gas and plasma. He said science was a way to make people fall for the devil, and that Einstein was a quack, and that physics was never proven. I didn't know what to say. He also asked me where the egg I laid every month was. since he got intimacy education mixed up too. I had to explain ovulation and the menstrual cycle to a grown man in my dorm room, while my 3 roommates laughed at him. He's never even held hands with a woman so far in his life, and he's almost 30 now. Story 14. So not necessarily a dumb question, but it's one I'm embarrassed about to this day. So in middle school American history class, I say about 7th or 8th grade, we're usually given multiple daily questions, and the teacher would decide which one of the questions the class will answer. It was generally 3 questions. I looked down at my answer sheet, just staring at one specific question, thinking that the teacher would ask that one. However, the teacher asked a different question instead, but I wasn't listening properly and thought he asked the question I wanted to answer. So I raised my hand to answer. When he picked me, I said, and I quote, wait, what? And the entire class erupted with laughter. Story 15. This isn't actually my story to tell, but my twin sister's. In her freshman high school world history class, they were covering the Industrial Revolution. The teacher asked the class what wasn't around prior to the Industrial Revolution, and this real-life dumb blonde raised her hand and said, cows? This provoked laughter among the other students, including my sister. The teacher tried to give her a second chance for a correct answer, but the girl blows it and answers back, pigs? The whole class just ends up losing it. To this day, and even as I write this story out, this story still cracks my family and I up, especially as we tell it to our friends. Story 16. The disbelief on intimacy education. Yeah, some places just don't do that kind of education in high school. For example, a Texas high school I was in pretty much was like, intimacy makes baby, yet did jack all else in explaining. Like they expected that not explaining safe sex would deter it. One girl in a childhood development class I was in, i.e. explained a bit of baby growing but mostly the pre-education years, got pregnant, and after she had moved to another state, I kid you not, the teacher said, I would have thought this class would have been a great birth control. Obviously making a joke. Was actually funny, just was surprising that the teacher made the joke. Story 17. I told my friends the joke, if you ever feel worthless, remember, Mongolia has a navy. They didn't understand the joke, but for different reasons than I thought. One of them didn't know what a navy was. I was already dying inside. And the other asked, do we have a navy? She was asking if Arkansas had a navy. I thought she was talking about the U.S., so I said, of course, yes. It was hilarious when she realized how dumb of a question she asked. In American history class, I know most countries of the world, and a lot about them and their history. A lot because I don't want to make myself look dumb. This killed me. Story 18. Not in high school, but I was drinking something with friends and we're totally into discussing something about laws, taxes, and some ranty political stuff work class is talking about in general and how nobody of us would have any money when we're old, and this one girl standing close, known for not being the brightest, just asks bluntly, when there's not enough money, then why don't we just print more? I was so shocked about this missing information there, I needed a moment to answer. I think if you don't know that, there's no point in explaining it. And she was not close to getting how I meant that by her facial expression. Story 19. Have one about my sister, not from school. I was telling her about how pineapples aren't actually one big fruit, but dozens of berries semi-fused together, because we were making pineapple upside-down cake, and I thought it'd be an interesting thing to talk about. She stared at me silently for a moment, picked up a bell pepper, and asked me, if pineapples are a bunch of berries, then what are vegetables made out of? I cried laughing, but she was still so confused. Also, she was 17. Story 20. A standout for me in school, and I still see adults arguing about this, was a teacher devoting 10 minutes of class time to explain to 2 kids in the class why a sharp knife is safer to use in a kitchen than a dull knife. Yes, the knife is sharper, so it has the potential to cut you more, but a dull knife has more potential to cause accidents in the kitchen due to its inability to cut well. Every year or so, I still hear people not understanding how this could be true. Story 21. The part that frightens is that some of these questions are asked in universities. When you just enroll in university, you already have to have some basic understanding of how things work. It's higher education, a degree you're getting. And with questions like this, I can't help but get scared thinking what's inside the heads of people who didn't go to university. And then I remember that some people keep asking questions like this after graduation and kind of give up. Story 22. I heard this from a family friend. He was in America, guest speaking in school about Australian culture. Can't remember which year level, but yeah, one student, apparently the brightest girl in the class, raised her hand and asked, "Does Australia have a different moon to us?" She thought since the southern and northern hemispheres see different stars and constellations, she thought that we have different moons. Story 23. In my sophomore year of high school, my friend group somehow got on the topic of gangs. Our soccer coach, we all played soccer for our school, said, "Oh yeah, I used to be in the Hells Angels. Haven't spoken to any of them in years, though." One of my friends, with a surprised look on his face, says, "Wait, gangs are real? I thought that was a movie thing." She was a very sheltered child. Story 24. I'm Serbian, and on English class, a boy, whose grades are bad, by the way, asked, "If we learn English, do the English learn Serbian?" I was laughing at that when I came home, because it would have made sense, but it doesn't because there are like 7.5 million native Serbs, but over 350 million native English speakers. Story 25. Isn't Jamaica in the U.S.? From a kid in my class. Yes, this was in America. Oh yeah, another one. Brazil is in Europe. A kid shouted this very confidently. I'm American myself, and I purposely learned every country in the world so I can avoid embarrassment like this.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.